Hello, Writing Fellows. Thank you for joining me for this hopefully brief video that will help give you some insight on guiding you through your writing workshops, whether it's your first workshop or your 100th workshop. Hopefully, this will give you maybe a different perspective, or especially using some of the new tools that have been introduced through the courses, just a way to really seamlessly flow from your preparation into the introduction and the actual workshop itself. So the things that we're going to cover in this video, we're going to start with the preparation. So talking about the familiarity with the assignment details, the grading rubric, setting up your discussion board threads, and then reviewing the student's rough draft. Then we'll talk about workshop direction and how you can actually go about hosting the workshop depending on the number of students that you have, and things like that. And then finally, we'll end with how to end the actual workshop and the sort of follow-up resources that you can provide to the students that have attended your workshops. I'm going to switch to screencast now so that we can kind of see how I use some of the materials. I hope this proves helpful for some of you out there. And if you have any other questions or comments or ideas on how to enhance this workshop process, I would love to hear back from you on that. So again, thank you for watching and I hope it helps. Bye. All right, team. So one of the first things as far as getting started is making sure that, of course, you are very, very familiar with the assignment details. So in your Blackboard course shell, you should be able to scroll on to where it says assignment information, find the multimodal projects, project 1 or 2. This one is 2 that we'll be talking about in this example. And here you can download either the document that is below, but one of the first things is really making sure you're very comfortable with the project overview. This is really important, especially as we challenge and hope that students will take a creative and new approach to how they are able to address the topic that they've chosen while considering their audience and the needs of their audience. So a lot of times we really hope that their project is something other than just a typical paper. So knowing what the standards are and what we really want them to be able to accomplish is going to be very important, as well as the project requirements, making sure that they're able to meet in whatever format they may choose the minimum requirements. And again, sometimes the font choice and things like that may change, but making sure again the 12 point, the double space, things like that, and that it is available in these 3 downloadable forms. So again, those are just some of the things as you go through the rough draft, you can kind of do a double check for them on that. You'll also get some good information about some of the background for the purpose of this project here too. So again, scroll through that. What I like to do the first couple of times I do this is print off this document and then highlight some of the most important aspects to me to make sure that I'm really paying attention to those during my rough draft reading of the student's work. The second thing with which you'll want to be very familiar is a rubric for the project. And again, you can download it or just view it here. But knowing the point value for each one of the different topics, as well as some of these specifics under here, will really help guide you as you begin to give feedback using language that ties into and supports the rubric, which is what the student will ultimately be graded from. Some people really like to actually go through and kind of do a mock rubric grading during or for the rough draft. So let's say for audience, it would be a 3 out of 5 points, and then you could say, well, the target audience wasn't specifically identified, excuse me. And so then it gives you a specific talking point, again, using language from the rubric with which the student should already be familiar, in order to kind of begin that conversation and get the student thinking about some of the ways that they might be able to revise their work to further align it with the rubric. One of the next things that will be really important too is connecting with your instructor just to make sure that you're on the same page as far as the main focus is for this project, and any specifics that they would want you to cover during the writing workshop in order to support some of the things that they've said to the students in the rough draft submission or the project topic submission. All right, so next, setting up discussion boards. So you all know how to access your group discussion board. One of the things I want to show you is you are able to actually go in and edit the text that you see here. So what I like to do is add some custom text at the bottom of mine, and you can see here what I said is once you sign up for a time and put your draft, you will receive a calendar invite from me, Michael, that you should confirm, since it will also have the URL link to the Google Hangout meeting. Note, threads will disappear 24 hours before the workshop. I need time to prepare, or if four students sign up. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But to show you how to do that, all you need to do is click on the arrow next to the topic heading and click edit. And that'll lead you to a page like we're very familiar with seeing where you can edit the submission entry. Again, clear that with your instructor beforehand, save it, and then that'll appear there. So I've got mine set up for project 1 and project 2. The self-assessment document is linked here for the students. So after you do this, let's talk about hiding discussion board threads. So again, one of the reasons that I do that is that it really takes me about 24 hours in advance to plan out with my own time and my schedule enough time to give to the students' work for out of respect for the amount of time that they've given it, and enough time for me to really create enough ideas for an engaging conversation versus just pointing out, oh, we need to change this or change that. So in order to do that, you can click on whichever thread. So this one I'm actually going to go ahead and do because we are 24 hours from that one. Under thread actions, if you scroll down and click hide, what this will do is you'll still be able to see all the information, but then for the student's view, and I'll click to the student preview here, but it'll actually hide that workshop thread. So that way, again, last time I had a lot of students kind of signing up a couple hours before, and I definitely wasn't able to accommodate them in the workshop, although we were able to work out something else afterwards. But this is just a good way to make sure that they're staying ahead of those deadlines. One of the other things I suggest is really going through to, I'm going to go back and show you that discussion board, but using the Google Calendar to set that up. All right, so here you can see project 2, there's no more workshop 1 in the student preview mode. So that is what the students would see, and again, I just like to do that 24 hours in advance because it helps save me some headache there. So with the Google Calendar, again, the reason I suggest this is because it's kind of ASU certified. Everyone has access to it, and it's really, really easy to also add your Google Hangouts. So let's say I was going to set one up for tomorrow at 5 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit Event so I can add some more details. I like to number mine, so we'll say Workshop 1, 5 to 6 p.m. Now, one of the other things that's really nice to do for the students is to click time zone and go ahead. I'm in Pacific time, but if I set it to the Mountain Time Arizona, luckily right now it's the same time, so I don't have to think about it, but some of the other students will do that, and then in their own calendar, when they accept the invite, it'll set it for the current time for them, so it'll add that reminder. From here, and it automatically will create a link that I and the other students that I invite will be able to click on from their email and be directed directly to the Google Hangout. I'm sometimes a forgetful person, so I like notifications. If it's about a week or so away, I do, like one day, and then I always set one for at least 1 hour in advance just to make sure that if anything else is going on in my life that I can pause it and get to that. So to add a student, let's say my good friend Jennifer Thornburg has signed up. I start typing in her name, and you can see here her ASU is popping up here. We want to make sure we are not sending it to, for instance, a Gmail account, that we are only using the ASU, because when it's set up for Google Hangouts, they will not be able to participate if they do not sign in using the ASU invite. From there, I go ahead and, just because I'm OCD, unclick invite others. I want to have control. Once you click save, it'll send an invite, or it'll have a pop-up box asking if you want to send an invite to the participants. I would click yes, because then it sends Jenna an email asking her to confirm, which then I can make sure that she's gotten and received that email. All right, team, welcome back. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually starting the workshop. So the first thing you want to make sure to do is to sign in at least 10 minutes early, just so that your presence is there. What I normally do is shut off my webcam after it's set up and turn off my microphone, and go ahead and pull everything else up on my laptop so it's ready to go. But just make sure that I'm there. And then I also post a welcome message in case students sign in, 5 or 6 minutes early or whatever, that just says, hey, welcome to writing workshop number 1 for project 2. I'm excited to discuss your works. We'll begin promptly at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time or whatever time your workshop is commencing. That way the students are there, they're prepared, and they don't feel awkward just kind of sitting there waiting on something to happen. So if you have 2 or more students, what I like to do once it is, 6 o'clock, let's say, and we're going to start the writing workshop, is I just, again, thank them for coming. And then this is kind of the introduction that I give, but I want to really walk them through what the workshop is going to look like for them, so that way they feel a little bit more at ease going into it, and they're not questioning, okay, what am I going to have to say? What is he going to ask me? I'm going to tell them up front how the workshop will run, so that way they feel more comfortable during the process. So hi guys, thank you so much for joining writing workshop number 1 for project 2. I'm very excited to discuss your works, and I already have some comments prepared. What we'll do, because there are, let's say, 3 of you in the group, is we're going to start by everyone going around and just giving a very brief introduction to what your topic is, so that way if your peers have not read your paper, they know what we're talking about when we discuss your work. From there, I'll spend 15 minutes with each one of you, really diving into your work. And I've already read through it twice. Once was a cold reading just to get used to it. The second time I went through and added comments in a Google document that at the end of this call, I will email to you. So that way, again, I encourage you to take notes throughout this call. But if you have questions on any of the comments that I make, you'll be able to reference that document and then reach out through email, again, with any questions you may have. The next thing that we'll do from there is we'll really talk about audience and genre. Those are very big for the multimodal projects in any of the Eng 101, 102, and 105 courses. Seeing who your audience really is going to help you in the revision process move into what we call the reader-centric final draft instead of the initial rough draft, which is often writer-centric, which is okay. Again, the rough draft is kind of where you get all of your ideas out, and then the final draft is where you really make it more tuned into who your audience is and what genre they would need. The next thing that we'll do is go through the pre-workshop and make sure that we answered all those questions. I'll give you a minute or 2 to ask any other questions that we didn't discuss. And then if you have anything else beyond that, we can say beyond the 1-hour writing workshop and discuss those then. Okay? Any questions? Perfect. Let's get started. So that would be an example of my introduction that I would give at the beginning of a writing workshop. So again, the students know what to expect, okay? If I have just one student, I kind of go through the same spiel, except without having them introduce their topic, since I'm obviously the only one that's there. If you do have all 4 time slots filled, you have to be very cautious with your time. If you have 2 to 3, you can kind of go 15 to 20 minutes. If you have 1 to 2, you can go 20 to 30 minutes. But if you have all 4 filled, you'll want to dedicate really 15 minutes to each student. So I recommend 8 to 10 minutes would be discussion of the student's paper. The next 3 to 5 minutes would be discussion of their multimodal aspects. So that would be whether it's the infographic or, the PSA or advocacy ad. 1 minute would be reviewing the students' self-assessment that they filled out before the workshop, just to make sure that you covered all of their bases. And then also another minute for them to ask any questions that may not have already been answered. All right, I'm going to switch from here to a screencast and show you kind of the next steps there. Thank you so much for watching. All right, team. So I want to show you my process for actually guiding the conversation during the writing workshop. So for me, I love using the Google Drive and Google Documents. Again, it's ASU certified, so everyone has access to it and it's easy to share. So each year I create a different folder under my drive. So we are 105 session B. We are going to be in the Project 2 workshops. And then I have one for each one of them. Obviously, I only have the first two started. We are going to use the example from the first one, and we will call the student Danielle. So I have her Google document pulled up here, as well as her self-assessment, the pre-form from the Writer Studio. So the first thing I like to do is a cold reading. This just helps me get a general understanding of what the author is trying to convey from their entire work. Obviously, the first thing I'll do is read their assessment cover letter if they provided one. This gives me an understanding, even going into the cold reading, of what they want to accomplish and what they know their weaknesses are. And then from there, I literally just read it all the way through from start to beginning. So all these comments that you see now, those were not there at the beginning, except for this last one, because this is a great paragraph where, it's just a beautiful statement by the author. So anytime I'm moved by something in a cold reading, I always call that out just as a compliment to the author and what they've been able to do so far. The next thing I did is I pulled up her rough draft of the PSA or advocacy ad, and as we scroll through it, you can see there's obviously some things I would want to comment about here and to give some direction. So finally, what I'll do is just create some initial comments on a separate page, and these I call my discussion questions, but really help me begin the conversation with the student around their ultimate goal for this project. So most of the time it begins with audience and genre. So this for me is mostly based around the project requirements. So again, I copy and said for this assignment, you'll be able to choose the genre that best suits your purpose and audience. This will help you continue to understand genre conventions. So again, looking back through, you can see this is literally just a paper. And as we scroll back through the comments, you'll see it's directed directly towards the Eng 105 class. So my first question is, again, this currently seems written specifically to the class. So who do you want to read this? Is it the leaders of the USDF, whom we'll talk about in a moment? And if so, should the genre then become a formal letter to the leaders? Is it the actual writers in the USDF? If so, does the genre of this information then transform into an informational brochure that introduces the topic of maybe the first annual Dressage conference, which is what the paper is about. So just kind of giving some ideas and some questions that will really help me start the conversation off with the student. From there, again, going off of the assignment, making sure right now we are under the current word count minimum requirement. So I would cover that and see if there's an action plan around that. And then the last kind of discussion point around the advocacy ad. So again, my questions are, what is being advertised? Who is the audience? And again, once we talk about audience and genre, I said, once you decide on the appropriate genre, how might this affect your advertisement? Do you think this might be off-putting to those who use Rollkur, which we'll discuss in a moment, and don't care? So again, these are questions that will help me as I go into the workshop be prepared to lead a discussion and not just provide feedback on someone's work, but to really help them think about it from my different and objective, hopefully, perspective. All right, so scrolling through the comments, we'll start here at the beginning again. The first thing I said is I love the narrative lead-in, and then I suggest this could be an awesome place to include some multimodal aspects. A video, pictures, and even a personal video would be especially cool. And then I ask a question. How will your decision of genre affect your use of multimedia? Almost every comment that I provide has a question involved, just because I really want the author to know that I'm not saying what I'm saying is right or wrong, but I want them to consider my perspective and understand why I'm asking that. A lot of times I kind of like to play the devil's advocate. So let's say I didn't agree with what you're writing about. how might what you're writing influence me in a positive or negative way? And then by pointing that out to the student, it helps them transform their work into, again, more of that reader centric draft. So here again, it's another question, including kind of a multimodal aspect there. And then here again, I bring up the choice of genre because she's used personal pronouns I, you, and we, which in this setting, which is a formal academic paper, you wouldn't typically use those. But if we decide that her audience is not a formal academic audience and then the genre is not a formal academic paper, then it kind of enables a little bit more freedom in how we use our language. So, by addressing those first issues of audience and genre, it really helps guide my feedback through this process. One of the most one of the most frequent comments that I make anytime I see something that should be cited again in the form of a question is this speculation, common knowledge, or a fact that should be cited? I only mention this once. If I see it multiple places throughout the papers, same way I would if I saw a grammatical error, I would call it out once and then say look for other area or look for other errors throughout the paper or other instances throughout the paper. Um, but by doing this, it lets the reader or the author know that if this is speculation, they need to find some research to back it up, or else it hurts their credibility. If it's common knowledge, then why would I be questioning it? So maybe it's a fact that should be cited. In that case, they need to go back and add that citation. So it's a good way to, again, create a conversation and not just tell them, oh, make sure you cite everything in your paper. This is an example again of a grammatical error. So again, I called out one and then I said, check the rest of your paper for this. So I'm not going through and correcting every grammatical error. If I see a repeated mistake, I call out one example, provide some resources on how to fix it, and then I let them know they need to check the rest of their paper for it. So that way our conversation in the workshop can stay focused around content. Um, Again, here you see another question and some suggestions, another question, um, and another suggestion. So, what I do throughout my writing workshops and through these comments is I don't know going into it what is going to happen when I ask the student about their audience and about their genres. So, what happens in that conversation is really going to guide my input. So, when I craft these comments, I really try to make them more question based. So then, as we create this conversation through the writing workshop, it makes sure that we are staying on track with what the student wants to accomplish. All right, so from there, again, those are kind of the first few minutes that I would spend with the student going through some of the specific questions. From there, I would switch over to their self assessment. Now, again, here she should have filled out her name and the email address here, which I blanked out. Now, this student actually did not fill out their self assessment. Sometimes that happens, and again, that just gives me free reign to have complete control. I'm just kidding. But again, this was probably just an oversight on her part or something that didn't translate when I copied it to Google Documents. But I would ask again, okay, so Danielle, are there any questions on your paper itself, the genre or the audience that you feel like we haven't covered, or from the self assessment that we haven't gotten to talk about yet? If there were, I would answer those. If not, I would move into her multimodal aspect because, again, this is 20 points for E105 session B. So I would want to make sure we have some time to talk about this. And again, it's very question based. So now, if again her audience is the leaders and she is writing a formal letter to them, well, obviously this wouldn't make sense. So, how would she be able to craft an advertisement or a PSA ad for those people or for an audience that would support the people that make those decisions based around her choices? Um, from there, the last thing I would like to do is just make sure that she feels comfortable with everything I provided and to let her know that I will send her the copy of the school document as soon as the workshop is finished.